I guess for every one of us, it's absolutely fabulous to see the kind of turnout we have. You all are here, the e-commerce session, right? Or are you here 1 hour early for the band that's going to follow? Okay, so my name is Ajit Khurana. In 1992, at the University of Texas at Austin, I used to teach stuff like electronic fund transfer and data transfer and blah, 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 because at that point, the term e-commerce had not yet been coined. Okay, today, however, not just has the term been coined, we actually have a very robust e-commerce industry, and leading that robust e-commerce industry are certain gurus, certain kings of e-commerce who actually, if you see the board behind them, have truly turned out to be larger than life. Now, let's first, for the benefit of me as well as the panelists, try to figure out what we are really doing here. So how many of you are here because you would like to set up an e-commerce business? Please, let me see your hands, please. Okay, so my estimate is this is something like 25% of the audience. How many of you are here because you already are running an e-commerce business and want to get ideas? Okay, so that's like 5% of the audience. How many of you have no idea why you're here? Okay, but you're confident enough to raise your hand to that question. And I'm confident that I do not know what I'm confident about. Very nice. So, I'm not going to spend too much time introducing the participants because, frankly, that would be like telling you who Shah Rukh Khan is. It's like a waste of time, right? Everybody knows who Shah Rukh Khan is. Likewise, everybody knows what Flipkart, Myntra, and Snapdeal are, right? How many of you have shopped at least once on one of these sites? I'll ask the reverse question. How many of you have not shopped at least once on one of these sites? Yeah, these people can leave the room. I mean, come on. What else can I say? Okay, so we all have audience still streaming in. Strangely enough, there are empty seats in between, so you don't have to necessarily stand at the end. If you move forward, you'll find some seats around. If you have seats, you can probably help people grab a seat because we would like to get this show started right now. So we have Sachin Bansal from Flipkart, Mukesh Bansal from Myntra, and Rohit Bansal from Snapdeal. What is the one common thing? How many of you have the last name Bansal? The only thing I can say, sir and madam, is congratulations. Okay, today it seems really well. In fact, I think I should change my name. I'm supposedly an e-commerce writer and specialist, but I think if I went with Ajit Bansal, then there is some future for me, right? Cool, so we'll not take too much more of your time. I'm not going to give you an elaborate introduction. We will run through all of you just once. This is how we are going to play this game. Except for opening remarks, which I would like to restrict to roughly a minute each, where you can introduce and talk about anything. I'm not restricting you. Beyond that, when we raise questions or points, I'm not specifically seeking that every one of you gives a response. Because what tends to happen in a panel discussion is that many people have the same answer. So if you have the same answer as somebody else, we do not want to hear the fact that I agree with him and would like to add. In fact, this addition doesn't work. What I would like to see, and what I think every one of them will gain a lot from, is where one of you disagrees with the other. I'm not joking, because see, the fact is that if you have come to this guru session, and indeed, what better gurus could you have? But if you have come to this guru session to listen to, generalities and sweeping truths, that would not help anybody. We would all feel good, go out and have learned nothing. What I want is that if you come across any point, if you feel that Bansal here is...
Which one of them?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So Bansal here is not speaking the right thing, and Bansal there should be opposed. I would like you to bring that up. Okay, so I am seeking to present this audience with differing points of view. I want this audience to hear that there are two sides of the story and there is no formula, because the fact is, the way the startup space has evolved over the last 2 years or maybe 3, there's so much happening, right? And you yourself must have attended so many startup-related events. We all seem to start believing that there's a formula. There's a formula. You follow this, you prepare this plan, you get such sort of funding, you do this, words like traction, scaling, etc. start coming into the picture, and that is how you succeed. If that were the case, then of the thousands, and I'm not exaggerating, of the thousands of e-commerce businesses that have been spawned in the recent past, we wouldn't have only 3 gurus, right? As in probably 3 is a small number, but we don't have more than a dozen people in India who have really made it in e-commerce, even in niche e-commerce. So with that, I'm going to stop talking a little, beginning with Sachin. only for this round, we will go one by one. Subsequently, I want answers only from people who have answers or who have something new to say. Sachin, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sachin Bansal. I'm one of the co-founders of Flipkart and the CEO of Flipkart. I think, so we started Flipkart about 7 years ago, and the idea that we started with was to create differentiation in the e-commerce space using service as an element, or customer service or customer focus as an element, which was severely lacking at that time. But we are, I think in the last 6 years, the e-commerce space has evolved quite a bit, and it's very interesting to see how it's still evolving. And continuously at Flipkart, we have been pushed by the market to continue to innovate, to stay up along with the market. So I think just the next generation of what lies in store is actually m-commerce. Most of the e-commerce companies in the next 2 or 3 years, I believe, will become m-commerce companies, or companies which actually transition to m-commerce will be the successful ones. And platforms. I think platforms are going to play a big role in connecting sellers and customers. I think that's going to be an important area where e-commerce is going to evolve towards. So I think starting from, 3-4 years ago, where e-commerce was largely about internet retailers or e-commerce retailers, now we are entering an era where the companies will start moving towards becoming m-commerce platforms. And that's going to be a very interesting aspect of the evolution, which I am looking forward to. Yeah.
Excellent. Mukesh.
Hi guys, I'm Mukesh, co-founder of Myntra.com. So first thing I'll start by just acknowledging I'm really heartened to see such a huge turnout. I am, I think, one of the oldest Bansal here in this group. I graduated from IIT Kanpur way back in '97. And trust me, in my days, this kind of turnout will only happen for, fashion show or rock, shows. So many people interested in hearing about entrepreneurship is, great sign. A lot of you mentioned you are interested in entrepreneurship, you want to start. So that is a great sign for India, right? So wish you all the best. At Myntra, we are focused on developing a unique experience in the fashion space. There are a couple of big opportunities. One is distribution. Whole modern retail is still fairly nascent. So, large parts of countries don't have access to modern retail. And distribution is, first thing that internet, solves, especially with the advent of mobile, etc. Second thing, in India, there are very few large brands in fashion space. That's a huge opportunity. One can attack that number of ways, by helping scale some of the good brands rapidly, by bringing international brands to India, and by creating indigenous brands out of India. Last couple of years, we've been working on developing brands. I hope some of you have probably shopped those. And we believe over the next 4 or 5 years, these brands can be as big as any other apparel brands in India. Other big focus area for us is to how do we create an experience in the online space this is better than offline experience. We all know walking to a shop and being able to touch and feel the product is a great thing, but there are other things that can happen in the online space in terms of about experience, all the social aspects of it, just being more aware, especially in the fashion context. So by integrating content into the shopping experience, we believe we can create a differentiated experience. So we'll talk more about that. Just looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Rohit.
Hi everyone, my name is Rohit, again a Bansal, like the rest of the panel. I co-founded Snapdeal with my colleague and high school friend Kunal. Went to IIT Delhi and very happy to be here at IIT Bombay. Snapdeal, we started in Feb 2010, initially as a business which was focusing on deals for local merchants. We started our products marketplace in the end of 2011. Right now, we are the largest online marketplace in the country. We are also in the e-commerce space, but our focus area is very different. We are primarily a technology company, which is in the business of connecting the huge number of suppliers and sellers in the country and enabling consumers to buy products from them. So that's what we do. We are a 1,500 people company based out of Delhi. Thank you.
Thanks for all the introductions. Now, my first question, which I think will help all of us, when you think of planning an e-commerce business, several of them are planning it, some others are doing it, and you, a couple of years back, were at that stage. My fear is that what you set out to do turns out to be dramatically different from what you do. For example, Snapdeal was about deals. Now you're the biggest marketplace. Flipkart also has joined the marketplace thing. Flipkart used to be famous for the last mile logistics. As in all of the things which were your initial plan or your secret sauce, somehow now it has evolved. Is this happening because there is no choice? As in, is market kicking you around like a football and you are going in one direction? Or is it that there is, this deep long-term strategy to which you are repeatedly aligning?
Yeah, so I'll take that, as a first crack at that, right? And I think just not only just learning from Myntra experience, but prior to this, I worked for 4 startups in Bay Area, from dot-com boom and bust days. And I think entrepreneurship is a lot about discovery, a lot of serendipity. I think one needs to start with the conviction that you are in it for the long term. You need to have few core tenets that you believe you're not going to change, but then you need to keep learning about the market. You guys spending 4 years here, right? When the day you come in, and after 4 years, you are a changed person. Whole worldview will change. Similarly, entrepreneurship. Every year learning, markets are changing. You're learning more about customers. So it boils down to how responsive you are, how adaptive, how nimble, while staying committed to your core things you believe in. So I don't think the change in business models, change in strategy is a reflection at all of markets that are bouncing you around. I think most companies over 5 to 10 year journey go through 2 or 3 times of reinvention. It could be how they approach the business, the markets, products, pricing, etc. And I think it's a key expertise, I would say, any successful startup needs to have. So,
actually, I have a story to tell on this. Even before we started, I don't know how many of you know, but we started our company actually in the end of 2007, not in Feb 2010. And the first business, I think we had worked for a year before we started, both myself and Kunal. The first business we started was a business called Money Saver, where what we did was we aggregated a lot of coupons from many retailers in a country, printed them into a book of tearable coupons and sold them to customers. And we had this, like Ajit was mentioning, we had this big notion in our heads that you need to have a very well-defined strategy, the greatest product in the first go itself to launch. So we took a full 11 months to launch our first product. We wanted to make sure we've crossed every T, dotted every I. We had the best possible deals that anyone could ever imagine to make sure that the product is the most fantastic product. And I think we got there as well, at least in our brains, that we had 1+1 on Domino's. We had a flat 35% on Adidas. We had I think flat 25% on Levi's, anything that you buy, etc., etc. So it was a nice thick book. You paid 200 rupees for it, and even if you use one coupon of the 200 we had, you will get double your money's worth. So we did all of these things, did that for about 11 months. And the day of the big launch came, we wanted to make sure, because this was such a valuable product that we had created, so we thought, we wanted to make sure we don't run out of inventory of these books. So we made sure we printed at least 50,000 from our printer and gave an order for more as well. So everything is done. We put up a stall, I think in 4 BPO companies when we were launching the product, to make sure we are able to generate a lot of awareness. And I think amongst these 4 BPOs, we would have met about, if not more, 20,000 people in the first 3 days of launch to publicize our product. Can anyone take a guess of how many products we sold?
There is a Cadbury's Dairy Milk for the correct guess, so please go ahead.
Yes? I hear 5,000. 500. We sold 3. Sometimes I wonder how stupid we were, but anyways. But I think that was a moment of realization for us that, we hate at our company what we call as curtain raiser events. That, you plan 2 years and, build the perfect strategy and then launch something that is bound to succeed. I don't think there's such a thing exists. You can plan all you want, but you will get real feedback only when you're out there in the market and you're talking to customers. And once you're talking to customers, they will tell you so many things about your own product. I don't think even a decade of research can tell you that. And as a result, we strongly feel that all the things about having a vision, etc. They're very important. It's very important to believe in something, but the real test of time or real entrepreneurship lies in being out there in the market, talking to customers every day, and changing and evolving yourself based on what your customers and suppliers and partners are telling you. And hence, it's completely okay to be doing what we are doing because we are just reacting to what market wants us to do. Had we been too hung up on what we were doing with the coupon booklets, I don't think we would have launched Snapdeal or launched our marketplace.
Okay, Sachin, I have a question for you. When I address audiences such as this, though usually much smaller, let's say for a startup kind of event where people are learning about entrepreneurship, I find that a lot of emphasis is placed on idea generation, as in what is the business that I need to do. So we localize this to e-commerce. Obviously, every business needs to be good at most of its components, but do you think success in e-commerce as the industry stands today for these people who are aspiring entrepreneurs is more about having that unique aha idea? Or is it more about the grunt work, going out there and just executing the most common sense idea? Which one of these is it?
I think most internet businesses actually look, from outside they look like idea businesses, right? And actually when you go deep into them, whether it's a Google or a Facebook or an e-commerce business, it actually looks like a lot like hard work. Every business that you get into, right? So I think I personally believe that ideas are for startups are overrated, and execution is kind of underrated. Execution is super critical. It's much more important than ideas. I think every single idea that you think that you have thought of and you think it's new, 99% of the times actually somebody would have thought of it before, and probably way before that than you would have thought of. So I think ideas, of course, are important from a timing point of view. That what time are you trying out what thing? But it's largely, I think, execution is way more important. Again, I also don't believe in one single idea and going along with it and that being your guiding light for the rest of your life, kind of thing. I think you need to be able to innovate along as the market evolves, as your product evolves, as your understanding of the customers become better. I think it's not about one idea, it's probably about a series of ideas over time. For example, just to give an example, when Google started, they had no idea about how they will monetize the product, right? They knew how to do a better search than Yahoo at that time. That's what they knew, and they had no idea about the rest of the stuff. And so that's what they figured out over time. And if they would have not figured it out, they would not have been here. But yes, they figured it out, right? So it's about having a series of those continuously. Again, a lot of companies stop innovating, thinking that they've become too big, and then what happens to them is actually, you can see with a lot of companies like Nokia, or where you need to be able to actually keep understanding your customers again and again. I think it's more about understanding the market, understanding the customers on the ongoing basis, and executing very good, very well. So I think that's more important for me.
Okay. So I had earlier, a few minutes ago, asked you how many of you have an e-commerce business or would like to set up one. I'll just broaden the question a little to move to the entrepreneurship space. How many of you are or aspire to be entrepreneurs? Excellent. So that's like definitely more than half the audience, probably like 3/4 of the audience. Whenever I go online and want to read about entrepreneurship, or when I attend some sessions, I find that our entrepreneurship seems to be very clouded or overshadowed by what's happening in the US or in one specific valley in the US. So, in fact, a lot of the terminology, a lot of the way we operate comes from there, but while, the truth is there are definitely differences. As in, we are not divorced to what's happening in the West, but there are differences. So I have a question which has two parts. One is, had you set up Flipkart, Myntra or Snapdeal in the US, has you been a US company, how would things have been different? And the second side of the same coin is that what does this audience need to appreciate about Indian realities, which will help them with a more realistic approach towards their startup in general?
So let me answer that. I'll contrast my 10 years in Bay Area, versus my experience with Myntra here. So there are few very stark differences, and while you talk about difference, I think differences are also disappearing very quickly, right? So, Valley has 30, 40-year history of entrepreneurship. The entire ecosystem from venture capitalists to entrepreneurs to life cycles, exits, lawyers, bankers is very mature. In India, we don't know who are good VCs and who are good entrepreneurs, who are the good lawyers, and all of them is being built simultaneously. So very little precedent of how to last 4, 5, 6 years. I think for all of us been a journey of discovery. I think hiring, it's got way better over the last 2, 3 years, but early days it was very difficult. I think in late 2000s, people rather work for large multinationals than for early stage companies. I think it's changing a lot. I mean, just very heartening to see 3/4 of the audience saying you want to be entrepreneur. So that's while in Silicon Valley is it's been so hot for the last 15, 20 years. People all over the country quit their job and moved to Silicon Valley. I did that in 99, quit my job, moved there and without a job and just bounced around for 3, 4 months and before finding a startup to work for. I think it's probably starting to happen in India, but it's happening slowly. The acceptance of failure is a very big thing, right? And entrepreneurship about basically mostly failures. You fail daily and hourly and weekly and monthly, and then a lot of those failures add up to a success. Reach one milestone. Again, a lot of failures and rejections. All of 3 of us can tell you countless stories about rejections by VCs and customers not liking product or changing business and all whatnot, right? So I think India, I think we've been a safe society, and acceptance of failure is only slowly increasing. I think still a lot of discomfort about ambiguity, So, but I think I see that's changing now. I think people are starting to be okay with the, failing in one startup, trying another, or going back to a job, getting some more experience, and coming back. So I think that's probably, another big difference. Forgot second part of your question, but maybe I'll let Rohit and Sachin help.
Second version of the same thing. So anybody else wants to talk about this?
So I think I'll take a different take from what Mukesh has done. I'll take an example of how our business would have looked if we were in the Valley. I don't think we would have started Snapdeal or the products marketplace that we are doing if we were in the Valley, because it's very important to understand the market which you are operating in and build something for that market. So because when we were starting our products business, we could have, everyone in the country was doing mostly inventory e-commerce. We were the only ones. We told our investors we want to do marketplace, and we talked to a few people. People were saying that you're crazy, because no one is doing that. But what we saw in India was very unique, which is not the case in the Valley, is the fact that organized offline retail in India is very, very, very underpenetrated. If you travel to the US or the Valley, one of the most suburban stores will carry 10 times the assortment of the most urban store in India. And there are practically no stores. Organized offline retail is 6 to 7% of total retail in India, whereas in most mature markets, e-commerce is anywhere from 7 to 13% of total retail. So what had happened in India is very, very unique actually. Actually very similar to China also, is that there was a lot of talk in the late 2000s about offline retail taking off and everyone opening 10,000 stores, 15,000 stores, etc., etc., etc. The moment that boom started happening, real estate prices went through the roof. And because of that huge increase in real estate prices, offline retail could never grow to the planned limit. What it did was it created a situation in the country where there were all these large number of consumers who had money to buy things and aspirations to buy things, no place to buy them. And on the other side, it created a lot of suppliers and distributors who wanted to get national reach for their products, but had no way to do that, because the way right now, even today, they have to do that is go to city by city, tie up with the dealers and distributors there and distribute their products. And I think this is, looking at this entire ecosystem, we felt that one of the biggest value prop for India is to be able to provide a wide variety of selection at great prices. And marketplace is probably the only way to do that at scale, because e-commerce has traditionally been thought about as very few categories, very few types of products, etc. But think of if you think of where would we go if we were to buy a doormat for our house? or if we wanted to buy a soap dispenser or a helmet or that bike accessory. People, even in urban cities like Bombay and Delhi, don't know it, but if you go outside of Bombay and Delhi, just no one knows where do I go and buy like a nice refrigerator or a pressure cooker or a doormat, etc. And I think that's what we saw, and hence we are doing what we are doing. And that's the reason we've accumulated over 20,000 sellers from the country and provide an assortment of over 40 lakh unique products to consumers. Now you can buy anything from our site. I don't think we would have done that if we were in the valley, because all these products are relatively more easily available close by, and hence the problem we need to solve is very different.
Okay, I'm going to change the question for you, Sachin, a bit, but before that, couple of admin questions. Are the organizers of this event somewhere around? So the time is something like 5:50. When do you want us to end? Is there any organizer here? No, they'll soon tell me that. So you want me to continue for 20 more minutes? 25 minutes, excellent. Just for the sake of the audience, subsequent to this extremely interesting panel discussion getting over, there are two bands which are showing up here, Koshish and Lagori. I guess that's in the same room, right? Excellent. Now, first, how many of you have had the opportunity one way or another to approach investors? This could either be to, display your business plan, seek funding, etc. How many of you have had a brush with investors? Any kind of investors, angel investors, the startup kind of guys, VCs, etc. So we have like about some of you, and I think the total number would probably be as much as 100 of people who raise their hands. Now this, I think at least Mukesh used the word investors. I coincidentally am an angel investor, and there's this publication, online publication called VC Circle. So it comes up with its annual rating of angel investors, and I'm in the top 15 angel investors of India. That just shows you the poor methodology that was used, as in nothing more than that. And what's very interesting is, because my first name begins with A, within these top 15, they alphabetically arranged it. So there are a lot of people who think I'm like the number one, which is like the biggest amusement to me. But, very simple question. What is wrong with investors? Don't you agree? I think that's the valid question. And I know that you are dying to answer and talk about blah, but I'm going to elaborate the question.
Can you answer that first?
Yeah. So, it seems like investors, at least to people, who really don't know them directly, are the most hair-brained people. As in, supposedly they have like the best qualifications, but they follow the herd more than absolutely anybody else. That's what it always seems like, right? Furthermore, they really never understand your business. Over 100 people here have talked to investors, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Dealing with investors, I think, is an extremely painful exercise, not because they necessarily cause the pain deliberately, but it ends up being that, right? As in, it's like almost as if you have to go and give them a little performance and a little show and a little dance, and sometimes they buy it. So please share your experiences with investors, and within your experiences, I'm a little more keen to hear about the negative experiences. Anybody? Well,
I'll let Sachin answer.
No, yeah, I think actually when we started the company in 2007, we actually jumped into it while thinking that, yeah, investors will welcome with open arms because we are from IIT and we have left this sexy job and we will, and we have this so awesome idea which will transform the way we shop, and like, this is the next big thing. And after like 3 meetings, I was like, this is the worst idea ever probably, kind of thing, right? So that's definitely, I mean, this is a cycle that every entrepreneur has gone through, especially with Indian investors, I would say. See, there's a big difference, connecting back to your previous question, right? There's a big difference between the Valley and India. In the Valley, in India especially, what is happening is that investors are looking for ways, when they're talking to entrepreneurs, they're looking for ways to reject the deal. While in the Valley, the investors are looking for ways to actually accept the deal. What are the criteria on which actually I can make an investment decision to actually...
So you're saying in the Valley, the match between an investor and an entrepreneur is like love marriage, while in India it is arranged marriage. You have to look at so many and just keep rejecting, and maybe you'll be left with one.
Yeah, and there's a key reason to that, right? I mean, the biggest reason is that in the Valley, there have been so many huge companies that have come up and investors have failed so many times. In India, actually entrepreneurs have failed so many times while living up to investors' expectations. But in the Valley, if you are a Sequoia or an Accel Partners or any VC fund in the valley, you would have missed a Facebook, you would have missed a Google, you would have missed a Yahoo, you would have missed Intel, you would have missed a huge number of companies. And that always is in the back of the mind of the investors, that I don't want to miss that next Facebook again, right? That's a very key thing when it comes to the Valley investors, right? They are super competitive. That I don't want to miss the next Snapchat. I don't want to miss the next Instagram or YouTube, right? So that's a very key thing. I think, but a sense of that is happening in India slowly. I see that transformed over the last 6-7 years since I have been interacting with investors. Entrepreneurs today have more choices. Investors have lesser choices. Investors are more hungry for good deals. I'm seeing that some bit of that, but I think for the balance to tilt to that level in India, I think it will take some more time. And till that time, I think you will have to bear with it, probably.
Mukesh, I'm going to let you come in a bit. Let me just give you an anecdote I have from purely the investor's point of view. So we have this group of angel investors called Mumbai Angels, and we had called a professor called John Mullins from London Business School to come and talk about investing. So he asked us all a question, the answer to which he thought was obvious. So the question was, as angel investors, which type of error would you be more happy making? Namely, make an investment that doesn't work out, or miss an investment that was going to work out. As in, which bothers you more and which are you more interested in? He thought that obviously you wouldn't mind continuing to make investments which fail, but you don't want to miss that next Google. And the interesting thing is that almost everybody in the room raised their hand for the opposite. That means they said, we don't have a problem missing Google and Facebook, but the ones I invest in, they better not fail. So that was
exactly. I think they're optimizing for failures. I mean, that's not the right way to look at it. And I think that kind of sense is coming into investors. They don't want to miss the next Myntra or a Flipkart or a InMobi or a Snapdeal. Yeah. So I think those are
Snapdeal. Rivalries are beginning to show.
You want to extend the session for a bit longer?
Yeah, Mukesh, so are you guys, I know you can't speak for everybody, but generically, a product of the venture capital / investment space, or would you really have made it without that?
No, we absolutely would have needed capital, right? I mean, we all talk about scale. Scale without capital is very difficult. So definitely, we would need some ecosystem to get capital into the company, right? But going back to your previous question, right? One is, what's lacking in Indian VC space is experience. People just haven't gone through a cycle. I think a lot of confusion also, exactly what do you want to bet on. See, investing is all about, in some ways, you're trying to predict the future, right? That's hardest thing to do. No one can predict the future. It's unknown. And so as a VC, from unit of either you bet on people or you bet on big, market trends, or you sprinkle your bets. Some approach. I think most firms are quite confused. They want to optimize for anything, as both of you said. They want to optimize for no failure, because almost like bank kind of returns, and still they want to be go around as venture capital. So there's a lot of confusion in the market. I think the sense of clarity is not there. We see very few people making big bets. They bet and they wait until a big bet is proven, and then everyone wants to get in. Not many people are taking big bold bets on just some entrepreneurs with the right vision, or so that's I think that needs to change.
I noticed that before Make My Trip got listed on the Nasdaq or Just Dial, or I could come up with a couple of examples which eventually listed in the last, let's say, 24 months prior to that, where listing was imminent. That is where a lot of investors' money came in, where success was defined, and I'm not saying necessarily exactly quantified, but I'm going to just totally change what we are discussing now. And I'm going to start focusing on this audience. So we have an audience which, the second most important reason for them to be present in this room is because they wanted to look at you guys and say, who are the guys who really made it? But the most important reason why they're here today is because they want to beat you at your e-commerce business. The question that I have is, are they too late? If they're entering, and this is not startup specific, because we know you're never too late to start up, but I'm talking of e-commerce. These hundreds of people here who would like to be e-commerce entrepreneurs, and they don't want to be the ancillary providers. Okay, we are talking about mainstream e-commerce, the Flipkart, the Myntra, the Snapdeal. Is it too late for them to start? Has the boat sailed, or can they today start and still try to fight against you guys?
I think let's just look at what happened in US for last 15 years, right? Most of the big startup names or e-commerce names from late 90s or early 2000s are not around. Very few companies have made it to 15 years. Most of the offline retailers, they had no e-commerce player. Now 9 out of top 10 e-commerce players in US are people who are offline retailers. And then there are these new disruptive business models that have come in the last 3-4 years. People are bringing social aspects, mobile, location, various niche segments. Amazon, they've been battling with Zappos, just last 4 or 5 years ago, diapers.com. And there are various categories where just they're not able to create the experience that niche players are. So I think field will remain, wide open. Whatever size of e-commerce today is $2 billion or so, right? Next 7 years, say $40-50 billion get added. All that is, getting created. And the speed is not an issue. Internet, most of infrastructure issues, payments, logistics will get a lot better. So they may almost be available to many of you guys as commodity in next few years. So I think a field will continue to remain wide open as long as there is a bright enough idea and a very strong execution behind it.
So you find that some of your most threatening competitors could be seated in this audience today?
Always happens around the world. I think people early 20s, mid 20s are the ones who take the big companies down. So if so happens, all the best. See you in few years.
Yeah, I look forward to some of you being on this stage. I'll continue to sit here. Okay, I'll ask you the questions next. But, you threw words like social and local and stuff. Let me narrate a very interesting anecdote. So when you have to invest, frankly, however idiotic an investor seems, the investor is largely playing blind. They are using instinct more than any analytical method. So there was this deal, and I'll now not name the company because it'll be just too embarrassing for the promoter of that company. So they approached us, and half of us loved that company. I was in the other half that said this is like an absolutely bogus idea. Right? Because the entrepreneurs were good. So there's this guy and the deal is about to close and they have space for like one more investor. He comes to me and says, Ajit, why are you not investing? I said, I cannot possibly see this business doing well. I don't see it as an acquisition play. I don't see it as making revenue. I don't see anything. He's like, listen, in the technology and investment space, kya bikta hai? What is it that sells? Search sells, social sells, local sells, and mobile sells. And then he says, इसमें चारों हैं. And literally that business plan had all 4 components, as in 25% each. So that is how the decision was being made, and the company got funded. It had a second round of funding. It still makes no money. It is now in 25 countries. It is doing, because when you have to do work, which basically has to not result in money. I'm not talking of profit. I'm talking of even revenue. And your only metric is like user base, etc., etc. There might be models, there is Twitter, there is Pinterest, etc. But the world is a little different than when investors eventually ask you to show them the money. Which brings me to you literally being the mentors of this audience. Okay, now, I want you to tell them, in the e-commerce space or around it, in the environment around e-commerce, what is a problem you want them to solve? And everyone is only allowed to give one answer. The most important thing that, you guys, payment is an issue, not easy to solve, but blah, 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 blah. Go solve payments. That will bring the next wave of e-commerce, etc. So I want all 3 of you to tell them the business idea of e-commerce or around it, which will cause the next big, which will get them here 2 years from now.
I'm actually quite intimidated by the brain power in this room, so anyways, so I think I'll still answer that question differently. I think I'll answer this in 2 parts. There are problems that can be solved in e-commerce to build a large business, and there are opportunities which e-commerce is creating, which could also build large businesses. At least I see 2 trends coming up, which could be where it could be possible to build a large business. One is, I think, definitely supply chain. Over 3/4 of all the packets delivered in China today are e-commerce packets, and there are literally millions of them being delivered every day. Same thing is going to happen in India over the next 4 to 5 years. So here's a space which is going to get created because millions of packets, there are already lakhs of packets getting delivered in India every day. I think this lakhs is going to become millions and tens of millions over the next few years. So that's a space which is right out there, which is bound to happen. Anyone who can create a business around that, that's
mean like courier companies, transportation companies, or Amazon drones delivering things from the sky?
We can do rockets also. We can
Shoot it to the customer.
Yeah, so that's one. But I think on a slightly different take, while this may not sound like the sexy business idea, but I think one wave which is taking off in India, and it is going to take off over the next few years, is to become a seller online. Because you think about it, right? The room here wants to do technology entrepreneurship, but a lot of entrepreneurship happens in India outside of this room as well. If someone is trying to start a retail business today, what does he have to do? He has to buy a showroom, which costs maybe a crore, 75 lakhs, at least that much. Then one has to buy a lot of inventory to fill that store, which will cost them another 40, 50 lakhs. Then you have to do interiors, etc. So it's a good crore and a half thing to at least even start a retail business without even knowing what it's going to do. Whereas starting to sell online is literally you buy a little bit of inventory, register as a business, and you can start to sell online. And similar to e-commerce companies, you can learn over a period of time what is selling, and over a period of time keep growing your business. We have sellers today who are doing over hundreds of crores of turnover a year selling on Snapdeal. And I think this is going to explode in the coming few years.
Ladies and gentlemen, the URL is shop.snapdeal.com. Please sign up this evening and start selling stuff, right? That's what we're talking about.
No,
but literally, I've got to ask you to repeat yourself. In your marketplace on Snapdeal, there are individual, as an individual could be a corporate, but I mean one identity, who is selling revenues of more than 100 crores?
Absolutely. So, I'll tell you a story. There's a seller from Ludhiana who we have. One of our team members, he actually has a mobile distribution business in Ludhiana. I'm sure he's like an early 30s person. I'm sure his dad would have worked over 2 decades to build that business over a period of time. And they used to do, I think, 110 crores in sales a year. He started selling on Snapdeal 3 months ago. Today, that person is already doing 8 crores a month, which is 96 crores a year. So this son now goes and tells his dad, Dad, what you did in 20 years, I did in 3 months.
Guys, I think that's a good takeaway, right? Sachin, we will be having a special session for you after this one. Rock band वगैरह छोड़ दो. Let's focus on this earning this 96 crore rupees a year, right? And there are some people who are really clapping for you. They are like, yeah, no Koshish, no Lagori, let's go with Sachin Bansal. Sorry, Rohit Bansal. क्या? See, they have similar names, yaar. I don't accept that as my fault. They have similar names.
Actually, I have to say an anecdote. This question didn't come up in this conversation, but a lot of people ask us, what's your differentiation as a company? I think one of the big differentiations for us is that in our co-founding team, we have a behel too. So
क्या बात है? Another difference could be that whether you make money or not, other people are coming on Snapdeal and making money. No, that was below the belt. We'll just ignore that last comment of mine, right? Okay, so between the two of you, any suggestions of what they should do?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think if you want to it depends on what kind of a business you want to build, right? Is it something? I mean, is your dream to actually disrupt a space using technology or using something else and create a whole lot of value for yourself and for shareholders? I think for your investors, I think that's. It's a different kind of thought process as compared to what Rohit was mentioning, which is you want to create a sustainable, profitable business, which is pretty large as well, can run into hundreds of crores. And that's a different kind of business. It's not really a VC fundable business. It's not really a disruption of a space, right, kind of a business, which is which tech businesses tend to do, right? So I think I would probably start with a low capex business and high dependence on technology. That would be my take on that. Again, can it be done without technology? I think very few industries in the world are not being disrupted by technology. I mean, there are companies like oil companies or steel companies which are not being disrupted by the computer technology. I would say everything is up for disruption, including taxi, right? If you look at Taxi for Sure or Ola Cabs, they're using actually technology to disrupt the taxi space, or Uber in the US, or even cars, which traditionally was not really, and Tesla is actually disrupting that in the US. So I think I would if I'm a very young entrepreneur without a lot of visibility on funds, I would want to start with the technology focused space, and I would look at the space around me and see what what can I disrupt using technology and low capex. Okay, just to explain for the audience, I think capex is when you invest in fixed infrastructure like warehouses and vehicles and stuff like that, and OPEX is when you have to run largely your business on month-to-month expenses of rentals and people's salary and things like that. So I think this is the, I would rather choose an OPEX technology-led business.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of things, right? One is, I started my career with a price comparison company, way back in 2000. So, in e-commerce space, there are big companies, but there are a bunch of smaller companies and more, some of you guys will start. There's really no credible price comparison engine, right? So I think that opportunity is open. So that's in one area, one can look at. Second, if there are only about 1% of India's population shopped online once, ball roughly. 99% of people have not shopped. A number of things are keeping it away. It's about experience, it's about trust, how to take first leap. So how do you visualize the product better, get right information about size, how do you escrow services, for example. So I think there are a lot of things in that area where these are all can be solved by innovative technologies. If you look at top 500 e-commerce players, around them there is a whole infrastructure of other providers, people who do search technology or recommendation engines and comparison, various kind of optimization and so on, right? So there could be, as the e-commerce retailing industry grows, people who are providing very deep technology service, I think that will also grow. I'm sure we'll see a lot of innovation in that area. Those are areas where a team of 3, 4, 5 very smart engineers can come out with technology that Flipkart needs and Snapdeal needs and Myntra needs, right? So I think that whole area is one of the area one can explore. What is that e-commerce companies are lacking, and can you build that as a technology service?
Okay, so we are now reaching the final few minutes of today's session. I'll give everybody closing remarks. In closing remarks, what I would like to hear, so I'm giving you some time to prepare for your last question, about where you see this going, as in, some distant numbers, just 10 years, etc. How do you, as in, what will be different? As in, you guys being at the forefront, cutting edge, bleeding edge of e-commerce in India, can probably see some trends which probably the rest of us can't. So I'll come to you in a second. Let me address the audience first. So my experience has been that in the last couple of years, something has changed dramatically in India. Last couple of years could be last 6, 7 years, or last 2, 3 years, depending on when you jumped on the bandwagon. But people like you, people like me, and the 3 people I have on stage actually have the possibility of not just setting up their own business, because that was happening like even 1,000 years ago, but to set up a business which scales very rapidly within their lifetime. And then forget lifetime, these guys have been doing it only for a few years, and make something really big. You didn't have to be like, the 4th generation Tata or Birla or something to have a really big business. And that is the reason why every one of us is in this room today, right? I wonder if we were having a similar session 10 years ago, whether the same number of people would have attended. So to that extent, I think you should congratulate yourself on taking this step. However, the path to entrepreneurship, whether in e-commerce or otherwise, is perilous. You have to fail every day, every minute, every hour, as one of the panelists said. So don't give up. If you have some sort of a dream, some sort of thought, I think that the environment is quite fertile. And one proof of the fertility of this environment is, why are these 3 guys here today? As in, every one of them has come from outside the city. 2 of them have a flight in under 2 hours from now, so they are going to miss it. Okay, another one has some more time. But what I'm saying is that the environment is conducive in more ways than one. The fact that these people are helpful, they want to reach out to you and help you, is because they probably are giving back, or they're just generous people. I think the traditional Indian businessman was not necessarily this way. So today's environment has been created by the Sachin and the Rohit and the, sorry, I just have to keep looking up there, the Mukesh of the world, etc. And you are fortunate to be part of this generation. In fact, they are also part of a privileged generation, but you, because you are like a decade behind them or something like that, you are in a better position. So I think that when you leave this room, don't just focus on the specific answers or questions you heard here today. See them in the light of how they relate to you. And I think as far as e-commerce is concerned, we are in the beginning trickle of what is going to be a tsunami, right? Of course, these 3 heroes have turned out to be the heroes of the trickle, and we wish them the very best for them to ride the tsunami out also. But you too have that opportunity. right? With that, I'm going to just like give all of them like a 1 minute closing remark, and then we will thank the audience for being such a patient audience in any order of your choice.
Yeah, I think, as I think has been discussed in parts in this conversation, internet is internet is a wave which is actually coming and is going to transform everything around you. And it's going to transform, it's going to disrupt almost everything, and I think it's up to imagination of entrepreneurs in this generation and next, I think, where on what is the limit of that, right? Can you go ahead and disrupt how farming is done? Can you go ahead and disrupt how B2B is done in India, or how can you go ahead and disrupt how how manufacturing is looked at, right, or how sales happen around that. So I think again in 10 years time, I would say that a lot of things are going to change and for the better. Internet when we have internet-enabled devices in everybody's hand in the next 10 years, and that will definitely happen. It's going to change everything, and I think there are going to be a lot more opportunities that are going to come up because of that in the space.
Yeah, I'll start by just echoing, what Ajit said. I think you guys are incredibly lucky. If you think about the pace of, change, it's just accelerating, right? 10 years ago, there was no Facebook in the world, right? Period. iPhone, 7, 8 years ago, iPad 5 years ago, and they are just household things now. E-commerce and Snapdeal, 2010. We got into fashion 2011, right? It's the pace at which technology is accelerating is mind-boggling. I think it's almost impossible to predict what will happen 10 years from now or even 5 years from now. What will definitely happen is, a lot of disruption will happen, a lot of industries will get reinvented, and I think, using technology, all of you guys, will have that opportunity. A lot of cutting-edge technology. Now a mobile phone, right, is more powerful than a supercomputer of, 10 years ago. Not only it's more powerful than a supercomputer 10 years ago, it has access to all the world information in your hand right now. You can, Google it, read on Wikipedia and so on, right? And the whole thing is accelerating. So there can't be a better time, India or elsewhere, to think innovatively, to create something that's very, very disruptive. And I think all of you are interested in entrepreneurship, now or near future should absolutely take advantage of that. I wish to be in your seats right now, so and there 15 years to do some amazing businesses.
I'll actually answer both the questions. I'll first answer how e-commerce is going to look like in 10 years. I think I'll not repeat what Sachin's already said. I agree to that. That I think a large chunk of e-commerce is going to happen over the mobile, given that it's becoming a primary device for consumption. I think e-commerce is going to be a part of our daily lives in the country. And I think e-commerce is also going to have a very deep sociological impact on us in terms of our behavior. As an example, as kids, we remember whenever we used to ask our parents for, that I want this XYZ toy, our parents would say, I'm too tired, we'll go to the market someday, or I didn't find it, etc. These days, I have my 8-year-old nephew send me links that, Mamaji, please, can you buy me this? So I think that, such are the kind of sociological impacts that e-commerce will also have over the next 10 years. I think time will tell what will happen. About entrepreneurship, I think the way I think about it is actually, I don't know how many of you are going to IIT Bombay, but I think entrepreneurship, the way I think about it is it's much easier than clearing a JEE exam or any other entrance test, because the big difference is you have only 1 or 2 attempts in JEE. In entrepreneurship, you can keep trying, keep failing. If you try hard enough, something's going to work. So start today and start failing today.
So I was right when I said entrepreneurship is like love marriage. You can keep trying and come again and again and again, right?
Someone's going to say yes.
Yeah. Okay, guys, you guys have been an excellent audience. I think that we have learned a lot today, right? How many of you think that you learned something in this room?
Please say yes.
And now see, I'm not asking the reverse question. Yeah, how many of you are confident you didn't, right? Yeah, because, but all jokes apart, I think that it was a good panel discussion. If there obviously is all sorts of points that are brought up, but if you were to focus on the few nuggets which can help you as entrepreneurs in the e-commerce space, I think this last 1 hour would have been exceedingly helpful. I think that before we end and close this curtain, it's almost like a stage performance, right? I'm going to just repeat an administrative announcement I was told to make, that Koshish and Lagori are going to be performing in this room. And with that, I think we will end by giving you a very big hand for this fabulous audience giving.
I would like to invite Professor Khusre, the faculty in charge of Entrepreneurship Cell, IIT Bombay, to felicitate the 4 panelists over here. Professor Khusre. Mr. Ajit Khurana.
And then all 3 of you, I think you made this event, and I'm sure people will come again and get inspired.
Mr. Sachin Bansal, Mr. Mukesh Bansal, and Mr. Rohit Bansal.